Hi, I'm Jason with Geek Fever Games. I'm the co-creator of Mars vs. Earth, and today we're going to do a brief mock gameplay video to demonstrate how to play the game. Enjoy. Setup for the game is very easy. The first thing you need to do is construct the DNA deck. The DNA deck is made up of two types of cards, human and Martian clone. You consult the quick reference card to determine for the number of players in the game how many of each of those cards are going to be in the deck. In a 5-player game, which is what we'll do here, there are 13 human and 2 Martian DNA cards. I've already constructed the deck in that fashion. Next, what we do is shuffle all of the decks, DNA cards, agents, skill cards, and the threats. The board is placed in the center of the table. Some versions of the game come with cards instead of a board, but the purpose is the same. It's to track the human resources. Humans have people, tech, food, and defense. Again, the quick reference card will indicate how many starting resources the humans have. In a 5-player game, I've already placed these resource tokens on the 8 spot. The humans lose if any one of these resources spirals all the way down to 0, the crater in the middle. Humans win by succeeding at defeating a certain number of threats. In a 5-player game, that number of threats is 9, 3 in each of 3 waves. We will place the skill cards and threat cards where they belong on the side of the board. The DNA cards, in the beginning of the game, are going to hand out one of these to each player. So I'm going to hand out one to myself, one to each of the 2 players over there, and one to each of the 2 players over there. Every player secretly looks at their own DNA card. This is the most important part. This needs to be kept secret from all other players unless you're instructed to reveal it to a specific player. In my case, I am human, at least so far. If any one of your DNA cards throughout the game is Martian DNA, you will play as a Martian from that point forward in the game. You may be secretly working for the Martians, pretending to be a human, but you will win with the Martian team or not. If all of your DNA cards are human by the end of the game, then clearly you are a human. Every player gets handed one random agent card. These are face up. We have Duke McGraw over here. He is king of military. We have John Sardusky. He's good at military and covert. We have Bonnie Hill, anthropologist. She's good at diplomacy and science. And we have 004, Andre Richards, secret agent, British intelligence. He's good at several things. The remaining agent cards are placed up at the top of the board in case we need them later. The last thing to get started is every player gets, in the beginning of the game, 4 skill cards in their hand. This scales up as the game proceeds. In Wave 2, everyone will get 5 skill cards in their hand, and in Wave 3, everyone will get 6 cards in their hand. When I say everyone, I mean human agents. Once a player who is a Martian has been revealed as a Martian, they have a special hand size as dictated by their Martian DNA card. I have 4 skill cards. We're ready to begin the game. I will start with the initiative pod for demonstration purposes, which means I go first in the first round. Conditions for winning and losing. Again, humans win if they have succeeded at defeating a certain number of threats. 3 threats defeated will trigger the beginning of Wave 2. The next 3 threats defeated will trigger the beginning of Wave 3. And after the final 3 threats have been defeated, the humans have won. 9 total threats defeated. If the threats are undefeated or the missions fail, what will happen is these resources will start to deplete, and again, if any one of them reaches 0, humans have lost. So we begin by drawing the appropriate number of threats in each round, which in a 5-player game is 3. As the first player, I reveal the 3 for all to see, and I see that 2 of these threats require diplomacy, They are the civilian uprising and the bomb threat. and one of them requires military. Each of these threats have a target number, 6, 8, and 6. That is the strength in that skill that's required to defeat the threat. There's a little flavor text here you can read. And then at the bottom we have the success and failure conditions. If we fail to defend the research lab, we will lose 2 tech. On the right side there's a little red X there that indicates we will lose 2 tech resources if this threat is not defeated. On the other hand, if we do successfully defeat the threat, we get nothing. Well, that's bad, but it's good. It's good because it's one of the 3 that we need to move on to the next wave. Most threats do not have a bonus if you succeed at defeating them. This one, however, does. This one says if we defeat the civilian uprising problem, we will actually gain a people resource. So there can be discussion throughout all of these various phases in the turn order. So I'm looking at my hand of skill cards, and I see I have a couple covert cards. This one's Strength 3, which is the highest. I have a Strength 1 Diplomacy and Strength 2 in Military. So I also have to consider my agent card, and I didn't deal one to myself, so here we go. I am Peter Kane, politician, 4 Diplomacy. So I'm really good at leading diplomacy missions against threats requiring diplomacy. So I might converse with everyone and say, you know what, I'm really good at this. Between what I have in my hand, what I have on my card, I think I could handle this bomb threat. Now, neighbors, I'm going to need some help from you. So are you good? Do you have some diplomacy that you can help me with from your skill cards? Do you? Great. I'm going to lead the bomb threat. The rest of the missions, I'm choosing to lead one or not, and I'm passing the rest to the left. So these 2 missions now go to this player. They make a decision. This is Duke McGraw, and he says, you know what? There's no one better to lead the mission against the threatened research lab than Duke McGraw. So Duke's going to take that mission, and he passes the civilian uprising. Peter Sardusky says, you know, I don't have any diplomacy. I'm not really good at that. It's not my thing. He's going to pass it over here. And, of course, Bonnie Hill, anthropologist, she's really good at diplomacy. So she says, I can handle the civilian uprising. All of the threats have been dealt out, and mission leaders have been determined. Each of the threats that are now on the table receive a skill card at random from the deck. This is called Fate. We don't know if that skill card is going to help or hurt the mission. But what happens is we need to contribute skill cards from our hand, and the mission leader is going to be able to contribute skills from their set of skills that they have on their agent card. And what we're trying to do is reach a strength of 6 in diplomacy. So I don't know if this one helped or hurt, because in fact, every symbol that is not diplomacy is actually going to hurt this threat, and you'll see how that calculates in a second. So what we're all doing now is kind of collaborating, saying, okay, between my hand, I know I can help my own threat. So I'm going to put that skill card in. You've got diplomacy over there. I'm sorry, I don't have any more that I can help you with. But Duke, I can definitely help you a little bit with a card from my hand. And now each of them are, of course, contributing cards from their own hand. Until we have piles of skill cards next to each of these various threats, and then we're going to determine how they resolve. So I am the first player. I have the initiative still. So what I do, everyone's done contributing. I'm going to shuffle all my skill cards, and I'm going to lay them out in 2 rows. I'm going to lay them out in the positive row, the row that matches the symbol, and the negative row. So here we have 1 diplomacy. I know I put that card in. And we have 4 in science. Well, unfortunately, science does not help in the case of the bomb threat. What we need is to talk our way out of this problem. So, in fact, if I were to total up what's going on here, as my agent, Peter Kane, I have 4 diplomacy. I have to contribute that. I have no choice. 4 plus the 1 here is 5, but then I subtract all of the bad. So that is actually 5 minus 4. It's a 1. 1 is nowhere near the strength of 6 that we needed to defeat the threat. Of course, I was randomly pulling cards from people's hands, so in a real game, you would see numbers much closer. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that this threat has been failed. This mission has failed. The threat is undefeated. We lose 2 food. The cows go down by 2. The skill cards are discarded. The threat is discarded to a failed threat area. And the resolution moves on to the next threat. So we shuffle the next threat and resolve. And now we're looking for military. So we have military is positive, diplomacy is negative, covert is negative, covert is negative. So again, Duke McGraw's 4 in military, plus 2 is 6, but minus another 4, nowhere near what we needed to reach the target. In this case, we would lose 2 tech. Now, some added elements. On the cards themselves at the bottom, we have, some of the skill cards have abilities. And these abilities will trigger based on the success or failure of the mission. In this case, there's a green check icon, which means if this mission was successful, that ability would trigger. But as we just saw, this mission was not successful, so we do nothing. We discard those skill cards, and we have another failed mission. We're not doing well. So over here, we have Civilian Uprising, just to play this out. We shuffle the cards that were contributed. We resolve. We have 2 that don't match, and we have 1 that does match. So once again, even with Bonnie Hill's 3 in diplomacy, plus 1 is 4, we have the minus 4. This yellow exclamation point icon at the bottom means that that ability happens immediately, regardless of if the mission is a success or a failure. And this says, take charge, the leader of that mission takes the initiative card. So regardless of the outcome, Bonnie Hill has now overridden and taken the initiative for the next round. That becomes extremely strategic later on in the game when you really need to make sure that the right people are going first. So we would have lost 2 people and 1 defense. Couple more rules that are important. There's what's called a proximity rule. What this means is that when there are threats laid out around the board, I can't affect the threats that aren't in my immediate proximity. And the proximity rules, which are outlined on this reference card here, are very simply that if I'm leading a mission myself, I can contribute up to 3 skill cards from my hand into that mission. My neighbors can each contribute up to 2 cards from their hand into my mission, and my neighbors' neighbors can contribute up to 1 card. This is a specific rule that very much allows for the game to scale upwards of 10 players. Because what happens is there's threats at the other end of the table. I don't actually need to even worry about what's happening there. I can't affect them. They're too far away. So after the threat resolution round, and of course we just had an extremely bad one, what we have next is an accusation phase, where we say, I don't believe you're helping the humans at all, Duke McGraw. Your mission should have passed with flying colors. So I actually think you're a Martian. I'm going to accuse you. Accusations are very simple. I take one of my remaining skill cards from my hand, and I place it face down in front of that player. That is the start of an accusation. Now, another player must second the notion in order to bring him to trial. So we'll say that 004 is going to back me up and say, I agree wholeheartedly. We're gonna bring him to trial. So that is a successful accusation. Duke will be brought to trial. We'll deal with that next. Now, in the meantime, Duke is saying, well, that's bull. It had to be you. You must have tried to sabotage my mission. So he's accusing me, Peter Kane. Now, unfortunately, no one's really backing him up. And they're like, no, you know what? The evidence seems clear. We're going to stick with what we got. So this one accusation against me was not seconded. When we pass the accusations, at this point, this is a failed accusation. It just gets discarded. However, Duke McGraw is being brought to trial. We have 2 cards that were played against him. Duke is now able to defend himself with up to 1 card from his hand. What we're looking for here is the total number of symbols. Very simply. Doesn't matter what the symbols are. So we look in offense, we had 3, 4, 5 symbols in offense against Duke McGraw. That was a very strong accusation. We must have really believed it to use those really good cards. He had only 1 in defense. He is ousted from the agency. 5 beats 1. If it was a tie, the defender gets it. Now, in this case, there are some very few abilities, skill cards in the game that have a gavel symbol at the bottom. This one does not. But if that gavel symbol is there, that takes place now during a trial. You would resolve what's there. It might affect the outcome of the trial. We discard all of these cards. Duke McGraw, no matter what, is no longer part of the agency. We discard his agent card. And now he's going to flip and reveal his DNA card for all to see. Were we right in accusing him? Or was he actually a human? In this case, he is a human. So we were all wrong to accuse him. Or perhaps we wanted to accuse him because we're the Martians and we wanted to sow some dissent amongst the group. Now, because he's a human, he's not a Martian. He will play at this point as a civilian. He can still impact the game, but he has far fewer capabilities, as you'll see in the next round. Meanwhile, the rest of us are safe. There's nothing else for us to do. At the end of the round, we can discard as many skill cards from our hand as we want. Typically, you would discard the lower strength cards so that you have a chance of drawing back up to a better hand of cards. So we now deal out. Everyone gets up to their full hand of cards. 3 over there. 3 to me. And Duke the artist formerly known as Duke McGraw, he still gets 4. He gets his full hand size of 4 skill cards. All right, in this round, we're going to show some successful threats. So we're going to make sure that happens. The initiative pog is over here now at Bonnie Hill. So she flips it from overridden to regular, and she does that instead of passing it to the player to her left because she overrode the initiative pog. So she is now the first person to draw 3 threats. And once again, we collaborate. In this case, there are some higher difficulty threats here that have multiple symbols. We have covert and science. What this means is that to complete this threat, either covert or science will help. Any of the other symbols will hurt. So Bonnie Hill says, well, I still have some really good science. She's going to lead that threat. She passes these. 004 says, you know what, my hand is really not good. Even though I've got a decent agent, I just can't help enough. He passes them. Peter Kane says, you know what, diplomacy's my thing, and we'll pass this one. Now, let's say that this last threat here, nobody takes it. No one's going to lead the mission. It goes to what I said before, the center of the table. We'll just put it right there on the board for the sake of demonstration. So once again, all of these threats get a fate card added. They get placed next to the threat. And we are in the contribution phase once again. So I, as the leader of the Threat and Peace Summit, I am able to submit up to 3 cards from my hand. I'm going to put in all those good diplomacy cards and hope to really pass this one this time. And we will have this player place up to 2. That's the most that they can play into the Martian Death Ray. And Bonnie Hill will contribute 3 from her own hand, remembering the proximity rules, the maximum that she can contribute. Now, Duke over here, the player who was recently Duke McGraw, he was not able to lead a mission no matter what. As a civilian player, you're not able to lead missions, and you're also not able to participate in accusations. So he's here. He says, you know what, I can help a little bit with the Martian Death Ray. So he puts in 1 card over there, which is the most he can put in because he's 2 players away. Now, the threat in the center of the table, everyone on the table may contribute up to 1 card maximum to it. Doesn't matter where you are. So this player puts in 1, and previous Duke McGraw says he puts in 1, and we'll have John Sardusky put in 1. Everyone's contributed, and once again, we shuffle and lay out the cards and resolve. Now, we're going to speed things along here. We're going to assume that there were a fair number of these cards that were all positive. We had a yellow reinforcements card, so of course that ability happens immediately. So Bonnie Hill would perform that. So let's talk about this too. We have a wild card here. It's got a symbol that basically is a collage of all 4 of the other skill symbols. What that means is Bonnie can choose. Bonnie's the leader of that mission. She can choose whether to make that count as positive or negative for the threat. She can do that after counting and seeing, if I make those fail, will it actually fail the threat? Maybe she's a Martian, she wants to, that's her play, and that's going to be her big reveal. Also, Bonnie Hill has both science and diplomacy skills on her card. She has to choose one and only one of those skill sets to contribute to that threat, to the mission. So let's say that we've laid these cards out and we actually passed. Congratulations to the humans. In this case, humans actually gain 1 tech. So tech goes up by 1, and that is one of 3 threats needed to be passed to get to wave 2. Now we move on to my threat, the Threat and Peace Summit. I know I contributed some really good stuff. Fate, unfortunately, did not. So my 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, very close, but -2, 7. Still not enough to defeat the Threat and Peace Summit, but again, for the sake of demonstration, we're going to say that passed. And that goes down to the second of 3 threats needed to pass. And finally, this ocean boiling machine in the center of the table, there is no leader. There is no skill set to contribute other than the cards that were submitted. And here we have, actually, military is good, science is good. In the case where there's a threat in the middle of the table, a leaderless threat, wilds are always counted as good. So that's 3 good. We have diplomacy that counted poor, counted against it. So there's 2, 4, 5, -2 is 3. Not enough. But we want to show how a successful round goes. So let's say that that also passed. We would have gained a food. And this would go to the pass pile. We now have 3 threats successfully defeated in wave 1. But before we do anything with that, we have an accusation round again. Now in this case, this player here cannot participate in accusations. He can't second, he can't accuse, he can't defend. He's a civilian, he's out of the process. But other accusations can happen. Let's say no one has any further accusations at this point. So what we get to is the end of the round where there's normally discards, but before we do that, we actually have a cloning wave. So what happens is we go back to our DNA deck that we created earlier, and because we've completed wave 1, everyone now gets a second DNA card. Now this is important. This player here to my left, because he's already a civilian, he gets his DNA card face up for all to see. He got another human DNA. Very good. He's still a good civilian. He's not a Martian. Everyone else gets their DNA card face down. What's also important is that these DNA cards are kept in order. You'll see that I'm placing them all, the new ones, to the right of the previous DNA card. This is because the wave that you receive your DNA card in matters if you get a Martian DNA card. I'm going to look at my DNA cards again. Both human. Let's look at 004s. Also both human. Let's look at Bonnie Hills. She's still human. And finally, John Sardusky. He actually has been a Martian since wave 1. He just got a second Martian card. Now, we don't know this, but the reason the order matters is because he got a Martian card in wave 1. That would mean, if that's the only Martian card he got, if he's ever revealed, he would be a level 1 Martian. Now, he just got another one in wave 2. And so all we do is basically add the numbers, 2 plus 1. If he were revealed as a Martian right now, he'd be a level 3 Martian. And if he got another one in wave 3, he'd be the Uber Overlord Martian level 6. If he only got one in wave 2, and he was a human in wave 1, but then he got another one in wave 3, he'd be 2 plus 3, he'd be 5. So it's a very simple calculation method. So the DNA cards need to be kept in order for that reason. So we go about the game, we rinse and repeat. The end of the round, we just got our next DNA card. We have a civilian in our midst. This civilian was ousted the turn before. So now, as of this turn, we can actually work to reinstate him and say, hey, guys, we made a big mistake, didn't we, when we ousted Duke McGraw. He obviously was a civilian, or he was a human. So any player that has, at this stage, 5 skill symbols left in their hand can discard those 5 symbols to reinstate Duke McGraw. Actually, to reinstate the player, he might be a different agent this time. So this player would say, great, I'm reinstated into the agency. His DNA cards are flipped back face down. He draws 2 agent cards and chooses one of them to keep. In this case, he's going to keep the Jack of all trades, Joe Anderson. The other one gets discarded. He is now a full agent again, with all the privileges and status. He can participate in trials and accusations. He can lead missions. So now we have the final discards and the redraw back up. Now we're in wave 2, and everyone would draw up to 5 skill cards. And then again later in wave 3, once we've successfully defeated another 3 missions, at that stage we will have up to 6 skill cards in everyone's hand. So let's talk about Martians, because at this point we don't know that John Sardusky is a Martian, in this case a double Martian, but let's say for the sake of argument that it becomes apparent that John Sardusky is really causing havoc and sabotaging all the missions in his area, and we ultimately are going to bring him to trial, try to accuse him. Maybe we're successful, maybe we're not, because he can defend himself every time we bring him to trial. Maybe he's held on to one of those skill cards that gives him some defensive power with the gavel symbol at the bottom. So he's hanging tough, but at some point he says, you know what, I'm actually going to be more effective as a revealed Martian. This is the case when you're a level 3 or higher Martian. In his case, he got a DNA card in wave 1 and another one in wave 2. So he is a level 3 Martian if he becomes revealed. And at the very end of the round, he can say, guys, it was me all along. I'm going to reveal my Martian DNA. He is no longer an agent in the agency. He now plays as a revealed level 3 Martian for the rest of the game. Now, what does a level 3 Martian mean? Well, you look at the card. The text on the card doesn't matter when they're face down, but now that we're face up, we see the level 3 Martian, the 3rd row down, has a hand size of 2. Only 2 cards. And that's one of the real downsides of being a revealed Martian. You don't have nearly as much power to influence the threats in the way that you want. But he has a couple other things that are very important. The next column says +1 threat counters. He's going to get one of these red chips. What he can do with this is place this on any threat that's on the table and increase its difficulty by 1. And he can do this well outside of the proximity rules. The cards still have to be placed within the proximity, but the +1 threat counters can go anywhere on the table. So that's a very powerful thing that he has there. More importantly, though, is the last column, which says he can lead missions. As a Martian, normally, if you're a level 1 or level 2 Martian, and the threats come around to you, you're ineligible to lead a mission against it. You're not a human agent, so you're not leading missions. Goes to the next player. But in the case where you're a level 3 Martian, you actually can be a Martian leader, taking over this mission. And of course, by leading a mission, he's going to most assuredly make sure that the mission is unsuccessful and fails. And most importantly is when he makes that mission fail, the card says that he actually can make the humans lose not only the resources here, but 1 additional that's on the card. So in this case, humans would have lost 2 food and 1 people, and then he says, and I'm going to lower food by another 1. So in this fashion, level 3 Martians and above have a really good way to affect the pace of the game. And this is by design. If Martian cards weren't handed out until later on in the game, the Martians have far less time to ramp up and really hurt the humans. So they have more power to help them in that regard. So that's it. Hope you've enjoyed this video demonstration of how to play Mars vs. Earth. We'd love to see you online. Take care.